A French and Italian IoT practitioners enter a building. What do they talk about? Well, you'll see in this new episode of the IoT Show. They talk about smart buildings. Fabio is the CEO and founder of Bubblynet, a company that has a very humane approach to smart buildings. If you like this episode of the IoT Show, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, to give us a like, or to leave a comment down there. Hey everyone, this is the IoT Show. I'm Olivier, your host. Thanks for watching. Today we'll talk smart buildings and the state of the art. And for that, we have Fabio with us. Fabio, come stai?
Bene, grazie. So glad to be here.
And Fabio, tell me, where are you calling from? Where are you based?
Tampa Bay, Florida.
Okay, so a few hours ahead of me. Nice weather down there.
Yes, and from the accent, probably you can say that I'm not from here.
We talked a little bit Italian at the beginning, just to say hi. So people have a hint, strong hint. Fabio, what do you do in life? What's your job and what's your domain of expertise?
Well, what I love to do is take care of buildings and create unique experiences and amaze people, make people curious, but also feel at ease. And most recently, thanks to IoT, what I'm trying to do is change the perspective of the building from what has been for the last probably 5,000 years. Just have a roof and protect from the weather, and that's pretty much it. To an environment that can accelerate or be a catalyzer for what you intend to do. Do you intend to rest? Do you intend to study? To have fun? To recover? There is many aspects of the environment that you can address with IoT, and for me, it's fascinating. So that's what I do a lot. I still, play here and there, golf, tennis, and skiing, but right now it's just I love what I'm doing.
Awesome. This is great. Actually, a great introduction, Fabio, because we've been talking about smart buildings here on the IoT Show, but mostly from the perspective of the technology, what the technology enables and so on. And so I really like the conversation already because you're bringing a more human perspective and a perspective that is very much also about the use case. Like, technology for the sake of technology does not work. It's something that people actually will reject. But as soon as you start bringing use cases value to people, in that case, in buildings, they will see technology. Well, actually, they might not see technology. They will appreciate technology because it gives them comfort, or as you were saying, help them achieve what they are here to achieve.
Yes. And just to intersect on what you were saying, in the lighting world, the best lighting is the invisible lighting. And I don't know if you ever heard about CAM technology, the concept of having a technology that doesn't distract you. Mm-hmm. I'm totally in. Like every single developer employee reads books about that. And what we always try to achieve is technology disappears. It's just the function, as you mentioned.
Fabio, tell me, what are the typical, applications, use cases you're seeing already, asked by building manufacturers or by building users, people in these buildings?
The things that we are doing nowadays, or now since many years at this point, is pretty fascinating. Talking about lighting, of course, we can dim up and down intensity. We were doing an airport a few years ago, and the challenge was, the employees in the airport, they are within the space. It's an enclosed space because all the perimeter of the building, of course, is for airplanes and passengers. So they don't have access to daylight. They don't know what time of the day unless they check the watch. And then you have also liabilities in terms of, if you keep it very bright and now all of a sudden you need to go out and it's 2:00 in the morning and there is no lights, now you have that delay of your pupil that needs to dilate to accommodate the low levels of lighting. It can be a challenge. It can be also liability. Mm-hmm. So what we did there is that we adopted a circadian lighting. So the lighting through the day changes in intensity, but changes also in what is color temperature. So we emulate the sun that is not there. And this is totally seamless. It's not that somebody needs to go to a wall and press a button. It happens, and it can happen every day of the year in a different time, because every day of the year, the sun rises and sets at different times.
Nice. Yeah, actually, it's funny you're mentioning that, because I just saw the option pop up in my Samsung Smart Things home automation system, where it's asking me if I want to check the box for circadian lighting in the different rooms that I set up. And I was like, oh, that's super
Exactly.
interesting. Yeah, it's perfect. I like that.
Yes.
I'm the one who likes, brighter lights or more, daylight type of lights. But you're right. In the evening and morning, daylight is not that bright. And so our body might be a bit, I would say, aggressed or not, super comfortable with too bright of a light in the morning. So that's definitely a good example. Fabio, can you give me, besides smart lighting, other typical scenarios that are already used or are in development in the smart buildings,
Okay.
scenarios?
Yeah, sure. Like I already used them. I'm going to give you an example that kind of incorporate most of what's happening in an environment, and is on healthcare. So on a patient room, after surgery, typically what you want is to maximize the deep sleep of a patient, because during the deep sleep is when you are rebuilding your organs, your tissues, and so on. And deep sleep gets cut by different factors. One factor is the lighting I was mentioning. So you were talking about your Samsung, and you see it nowadays on different phones. You are cutting that blue spectrum at least 4 hours before going to sleep. So you're going to be, when you fall asleep, you're going to be able to really get deeper and get into that state where you can rebuild organs. And the other thing is on a guest room in an hotel, as well as a patient room in a hospital, any sound that isn't familiar is going to get the patient out of a deep sleep and go to REM or other areas of sleep, still sleeping, but is not going to do what it's supposed to do, that is recover, And so sound masking is very important. So what you do with sound masking is that you're creating a sound barrier. So if there is a commotion or sounds on the corridor, is not going to affect the deep sleep of the patient. The other one is, of course, oxygen. You want to have a certain amount of oxygen. So imagine you spend the entire day and you have gas in your patient room, and possibly your HVAC is not recirculating because you are on a unit where they don't want to have your air going somewhere else, and vice versa. So at the end of the day, that oxygen, you keep on burning it. So unless you read how much CO2, how much oxygen you have in the room, that would allow for a fresh air intake or whatever could be the solution. Now, low oxygen is going to be low intensity on your deep sleep. So you see how you can address all the different aspects of the building, and now you can shorten recovery after surgery. That is, it's amazing.
Wow.
That's why I'm telling
That's
you,
fascinating.
you spend the nights, dreaming about these things and working on these things, because it's like IoT applied to humans is like, it's a drug.
It's fascinating. No, it's fascinating. I love that. I always say that IoT is going to be that bridge between the digital and the physical. And you're bringing that back to the human aspect of the physical, which I love very much. You touched on two senses already, right?
Yes.
The visual sense as well as the another sensory sense. And well, we were missing the smell maybe. But
yes.
I'm sure there's scenarios there, right?
Yeah, just quick scenario. A few months ago, I was in Washington D.C. talking with a lighting designer, an architect, a big hotel chain. And as the beginning of our talk, we were talking about experience. And of course, the experience has to do with lighting, we were talking about acoustic. Well, think about this. You can determine an experience by marrying as many senses as possible. And the entire concept was, we are going to marry beats per minute of the music that we are having on the surround, the lighting color, so that blue or less, and the fragrances that we are emitting on the building. Because a fragrance, like you go to a restroom, the number one requirement of a restaurant has to be clean. And what is the smell that triggers cleanliness? It's going to be, minty, citrony. But then you are now in an environment where, you are in after hours or whatever, you are on a club and you want to have an experience that is more intimate. Now you could have like an ambery or a leathery. Mm-hmm. Like now you have fragrances, and by the way, the in France, the noses, like there is very few noses in the world that are able to create those fragrances that trigger those emotions. It's almost more than emotions. It's almost like physical sensations. Yep. So back to what you were saying, with IoT, you can really hit them for all angles and have these pervasive experiences that are just amazing.
Yeah, totally. So we see this kind of applications, this kind of scenarios already implemented, right? The scent one in many big chains of hotels, in hospitality, you get into the lobby of these hotels and boom, you have that smell that sends you back to, wow, I was in Vegas 3 years ago and I had this exact same smell. And you don't know why, but you remember exactly the moment thanks to one of your, sensory. And so what I wanted to ask you is why don't we have that everywhere in work buildings or even in smart homes? What are the hurdles for making it happen?
Well, you need to consider that until a few years ago, IoT as we know it today was not available. Mm-hmm. The beauty about IoT is every year you increase computing power and you decrease cost. And it's keep on going, costs is keep on going down, and the computing power is keep on going up. So what a component that 5-10 years ago I would have to spend between $25 and $40, today is $3.20. So whomever tried to get into this kind of holistic approach to an environmental experience and tried 5-10 years ago, it was outrageous, the amount of investment you would have to do, and they got scared. So the message for your listeners are, IoT today is available and it's affordable, and it makes absolutely sense because we have now technology, talking particularly about wireless. You don't need to pull Cat6 all over your hotel or over your hospital, because with wireless, you can create a mesh and now you have a wireless infrastructure. It's like a virtual infrastructure where data and information can travel without the cost of a hard infrastructure.
Yeah. So technology is here. That's what you're saying, right? So technology used to not be here, but it's now here, and it's somehow recent, right? Connectivity is also evolving super fast, as you were describing right now. I've been working recently on some digital models for buildings, and we're leveraging existing standards like bricks, that define ontologies for describing buildings, entities, or elements and their relationship, right? So that's great for building these models and then interacting with all these things and the environment of a building from a digital world, right? So that's something that's fascinating. But our standards here is interoperability, something that finally is there for IoT practitioners to deliver their technology and make these scenarios happen.
Yes, absolutely. Another reason IoT possibly was not adopted as early as everybody in the industry wished was all these silos by application and by technology. And what I see totally inevitable is that these open platforms, like for instance Bluetooth Mesh, now NLC, they are pervading more and more applications. So it's not only lighting, it's not only HVAC, it's getting more and more pervasive to a point in which your entire building is going to have like a nervous system that then you can use them to get information or also to visualize almost like a digital twin, what's going on from a remote location, particularly when you're talking about multi-sites or very large buildings.
All the dots are connecting. That's fantastic. I love that.
Yes.
So you were talking about, standards somewhat getting there, mesh networking, IoT is here. So all that exists. So what will it take in addition to the technology to make it happen? Because there's a concern that people are having when we talk about, for example, using vision AI to do people counting, presence detection, and things like that. People are concerned about the privacy of their data. So what is it that is that a blocker? Is that something that slows innovation and developments down? And if that's the case, what is your perspective on that and recommendations for moving the needle and getting smart buildings going?
Yeah, I have that question asked quite often because when you start developing and also visualizing what could be the future, really IoT is becoming totally pervasive, and we enter into the realm of the application. Is a little bit like how Nobel Prize came up.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Nobel, his goal was to be able to create infrastructure across continents. And the next thing you know, his invention is used for war weapon for and IoT can be the same thing. IoT can be the next huge quantum leap into how we live, as well as it could be a shackle in terms of freedom and security. So I would say that we enter the realm of ethics and how technology should be used. And we, as a community, as IoT practitioners, we have a say and we have a responsibility to steer the technology towards proper applications. It can totally be done because without calling brands, you can have a voice recognition system in your home, any brand, for free. But then all that content goes up to the cloud and is going to be used against your free will because somehow they're going to force you in purchasing something. Okay, or at the same way, like we use microphones in certain applications. So let's say that you want to protect against a gunshot, a big Vegas hotel. Well, you could do it with a microphone and you push to the cloud everything that happens in that bedroom. Quite not the best. Yeah, exactly. It's a no. It's a no. Or what you do is instead of having a full microphone with all the spectrum, you just have a kind of a dB reader. So only if you have a certain acceleration on your dB intensity, you trigger an event, and the only event that you are pushing to the cloud is there is a gunshot, there is no gunshot. Okay, so you just on off. So same technology, but now is completely different. And what you were saying earlier about AI, vision AI, and so on, like we do people counting, but purposely we use infrared technology, and purposely we use a sensor that is able to recognize or differentiate between one or two people, or a person and a pet, or a person and a laptop, but is not going to identify the person. So the technology can be used in many ways. Of course, sometimes it's going to be the same cost. Pretty much, a camera with face recognition costs as much as. But we have, I think, we have a duty and we have a responsibility for the technology. For the right application and the right use of the technology. And it's really up to us. It cannot be up to the big corporations because it cannot be about, the big boards because, their goal is the maximizing of profit. And so somehow it needs to be like a root kind of movement.
But would you say that it could be our role as technologists to show the path to these big companies, telling them, hey, maybe the big Gen AI and Vision AI thing is not the only solution, and maybe you can. And sometimes, by the way, you can cut on cost, because you were describing, this gunshot detection thing with like a very cheap sensor. You can get that information about there's been a gunshot, right? And a minimal amount of software as well. Well, if you want to do a recognition on everything audio, you need to push all the audio. It has to be of good quality. You're going to pay for storage. You're going to use a lot of cloud resources for doing the inference on the audio clips or whatever, especially if you send everything. That'd be odd. And then you have to store that. You have to define policies for how long, blah, 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 right? So basically, at the end of the day, you might actually reduce costs. And so maybe it's our role as technologists to show the right path, which is on one hand, the ethic part of the conversation. And on the other one, sometimes it's like the right use of technology, not always the big shiny object that can do it all, but maybe the more specialized, and I like to talk more and more about edge AI these days, the more specialized piece of software or AI that will be really good at doing one thing and will do that at the edge, preserving, data privacy and this kind of things. And once again, maybe it's our role as technologists to push in that direction really hard.
I agree. It definitely is our role. Definitely, the right technology has economic benefits in terms of the computing power required on the cloud when you get massive amount of data that at the end of the day you don't really need them.
Yep.
Yes, we could go upstream towards the large corporations. I think that probably what we need to do is going to take a little bit more effort. Is just steer the market, because at the end of the day, is the market that is going to dictate where we're going to go. So telling our clients, hey, you could do it this way, you could do it that way. Telling the client, yes, I understand. Not saying, oh, IoT is super safe. No, you're totally right. If you have concerns, those are those are concerns. This is how you can avoid to have those risks. And so if you steer the market and then the clients are start saying, okay, I want to have this technology because it's going to be protected. And then I'm going to tell my clients, all my guests, that I'm using this technology in an ethical way, in a sustainable way. I'm using less energy, less data power, and I'm just upstreaming only vital information. The privacy stays there. I think that we have a better chance from the market to steer the technology rather than to go like top down.
I love that. And as a consumer, use your credit card to decide which company you want to support. The one that is doing things ethically versus the other one that obviously is not, right? So that's definitely something because everything is paying now, so do that in a thoughtful way and more intentional way. That's great. I like that, Fabio. Fabio, where can people find you and get and reach out and talk more about smart building with you?
Oh, my email address, very easy, fabio@bubblynet.com.
Okay.
And you can find my first and last name on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find.
We'll put some link down there in the description.
Okay,
one last word from you, Fabio. How do we make smart buildings happen? Technology is here. Like, you need to do it ethically and mindfully. Anything else for us?
I would say is just you need to be willing to embrace it, it's a new technology. Of course, our purpose is, as we said at the beginning of the chat, is to make it as transparent as possible, as invisible as possible, as reachable as possible. Still, it's something new, it's something different, and sometimes you need to have that little courage to say, yes, I'm going to go for it. And but it's definitely worth.
Awesome. Great, Fabio. Grazie mille. Ci vediamo.
Grazie mille, Oliver. Ciao.
Ciao.